in November when we did our last quarterly report, we were projecting the end crime stats for the end of the year. We have those crime numbers, crime report numbers, and we ended at 6,136 offenses total. Part 1 offense, what goes on the UCR report to the FBI. And the highlights of those are that we were down in homicides. We talked about sexual assault before. That number, the 28, the 5-year trend, 135%. That includes those years where the 2012 and 2013 before it changed, the definition changed. Also, I looked at each one of those 66 offenses. 3 were by. There's no good way to break it down, but there's 3 of those were stranger on stranger sexual assault offenses. The other 63 knew their attacker in some way, and so it's not a situation where people are just at risk out there. The folks are at risk, but they know their attacker, which is usually, that number is higher than the national average. The national average is about 2/3 of all sexual assault victims will know their attacker, and only 3 out of those 66 did not know their attacker. About 2/3 nationally, year over year, the national trend. A lot of research shows that. And so also sexual assault is one of the most, the research indicates that it's one of the most underreported crimes. So when we look at increases, we could say, since especially those are the ones where they know their attacker, we're doing a better job of connecting with folks and getting them to come forward and disclose what happened to them, so we can get them help and we can prosecute those responsible for committing those crimes.
Chief, I had 2 quick questions on that.
Yes, sir.
So if I'm understanding, if the definition did not change, our numbers would be pretty comparable to where we were in the past. It's really a definitional kind of semantics of the...
Well, that's part of it, but we are done a much better job of having people come forward. Okay. Including these numbers is one that's almost a 10-year-old sexual assault, because it's when they report them is when we have to log them in the stats. And so somebody made an outcry that happened when they were a child. It was in the statute of limitations. We still carry it on the books at this time. So
the other question I had, I followed some media reports locally, statewide, of a backlog on rape kits being tested.
Yes,
and
sir.
Some of the numbers are in the thousands for these municipalities, and I talked to our city manager, and we don't have any currently on backlog. Is that correct?
No, sir. Because our numbers, even that, all those, if we have a kit, we get it tested. We're going to prosecute somebody. We get them tested. We get them entered in the system, into the coded system.
And so I guess I'm just curious to better understand the phenomena that's happening statewide. Is it cost prohibitive? Is it time prohibitive? How are we having a buildup? Who provides the funding? If you could just kind of walk me through that, just for my own interest.
Normally, the agency has to pay for their own. Every victim of sexual assault is offered a chance to go have the sexual assault exam. And in Dallas County, we have 3 hospitals now that do the same exam, sexual assault nurse examination. So especially trained nurses who do that. Those kits are stored. That evidence is stored. And unless someone is prosecuted, most agencies don't send, or is arrested and charged with a crime, most agencies don't send those off to be tested unless there's going to be a prosecution out of it. So, or unless they think it can be linked to some other, there's a serial sexual assault, predator work in the neighborhood or work in the city. And so they sit there untested. What we've been doing is we test ours. And testing them just means send them for DNA testing, get them into the coded system.
So, in your professional opinion, the cities that have this developed is because of funding? There's not a ready prosecution?
It's because of the volume also. When you look at other cities like Dallas, Houston, most of this is affecting the very large urban centers. Yeah. Dallas, San Antonio, Houston. Right. They just, when you put that in with everything else, just like they don't test all the drugs unless they're going to prosecute somebody. Yeah. They don't send them to the lab to get the breakdown and how much cocaine, what purity level is this drug. I mean, it's just... It is just a cost issue about getting them tested for them.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And then the robberies we did, we are just like my cohorts over in Irving and Grand Prairie and Garland. We also saw an increase in robberies. We discussed that at length. And what we're seeing is folks that hit one city will go to another. They'll make the loop. They'll go to Garland, Mesquite, Ball Springs, Seagoville, go back. And so we work together. We share information. We share intelligence because we share the bad guys. And they're mobile, and so we work together to clear those up. Aggravated assaults were up, and as I mentioned back in November, when we closed the year out, a significant number of those were road rage incidents. We had 19 different road rage incidents, and 10 of them had 3 or more victims. So if they pointed a weapon, going down the highway, they get into it, one points a weapon at a vehicle, and there's 3 or 4 people in the car, each one of those is a victim, or if the vehicle gets shot at or something. So we had 10 offenses that resulted in 3 or more victims for each one of those, for just one actual incident. So that helped drive those numbers up significantly. Burglary was down, which is a good thing. Property crime is what drives our crime rate here in the city of Mesquite. Thefts, that includes burglary of motor vehicle. The number one most often reported crime in the city of Mesquite is burglary of motor vehicle. As I shared with you some numbers during the budget session about when we looked at them for 28 days from January to February, 40% of those vehicles were unlocked. And so our crime prevention efforts are going forward to get people to lock their vehicles and take their valuables out. The Lock, Take, and Hide program, we've been emphasizing that again with all the businesses. And vehicle thefts. So when you look at property crime, which accounts for 90% of all of our reported crime, each one of those categories is down, and gives us an overall reduction in crime for the year over the 5-year average.
Hey, Chief, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
We looked at this vehicle theft number, and I know we talk about our mall and all of our shopping and stuff, but we do seem to have theft in the neighborhoods as well. That seems, if it happens to you or somebody in your family, it's a big deal.
Yes, sir.
Do we find more of ours happening in those regards, or is it around the mall? Can you kind of share a little bit about the vehicle theft number, just generally?
Most of ours are in the concentration of where vehicles are, which is in the business of the commercial areas. We do have some, but most of ours are in those commercial centers. Yeah, so we do have some in the neighborhoods. I mean, come outside and your car is gone. So park it in the driveway and stuff like that. And we've also had some, it's not including the vehicle thefts, it's in the thefts category, but it's automobile accessory thefts. We went through a time last year where they were stealing wheels. You come outside and your vehicle's up on blocks. Happened to one of my neighbors across the road from me from where I live. I turned the corner and I said, well, that doesn't look right. I saw his vehicle up on blocks, and sure enough, they got his wheels. But we did catch a couple of guys who were doing that. Third row seats in the big SUVs and in the fancy wheels. So.
Thank you.
So overall, we ended up with a crime rate of 42.92 per 1,000 population, and that's our lowest, we'll see here in a minute, our lowest crime rate in 30 years, rate of crime. Now, going back to the other slide where our total number of offenses will not change, but the FBI will not publish their final UCR report for 2016 until June. And our rate of crime may change some because they use different numbers. We use the population number that you adopted in the council earlier last year, the 142,000. They use a census tract projection number, a census, U.S. Bureau Census projection number, and that could be higher or lower than what we have. And so the rate could change on the official report, but the total number of crimes are the same. That they don't change. And that's the 5-year, and here's the 30-year. When you look at the 30-year, it peaked back in the 80s, late 80s, and we're holding our own right now. And that's what I was talking about. The actual rate may change some based on the population that the FBI uses when they plug in our numbers. Our staffing. Currently, we have 16 police officer vacancies. We have an academy class in right now. We hired 7. We have 2 of those that are laterals. We swore them in Friday. They're already going to move from the classroom after this week into the field training process. And recruiting is something that's been a priority for us across the organization. We're doing a couple of different things we haven't done before. The staff support division bureau is going to go out to East Texas. They did a market analysis and look at our salary in this region, and its average is competitive. But if you just go an hour east towards Tyler, hour and a half east out there, our salary is about $20,000 more than what anybody's making out there. And so they came to me with the idea we're going to run a billboard in HR. Director Rick French is going to help us with that, with the advertising. And they started advertising the test we're going to give there in May, and we believe we can capture some potential candidates out there who are willing to come into town for a $20,000 raise over what they're making out there already. So something we haven't done before, we're going to try. Everybody understands the importance of getting that number up. and getting us to full staffing.
Chief, can I ask you a quick question on the regards with recruiting?
Yes, sir.
How have our efforts lately been with recruiting versus, say, folks who just have an interest in the position or the profession here locally? How's that?
I'm sorry. I don't,
How are we doing in recruiting lately versus folks who just decide to come apply who are not recruited in any way?
well, we have recruiting on the website. We advertise on a couple of websites, and so most of our referrals still come from the internet. When we come in, they come in and they apply, we do ask them, how did you find out about us? And we track that.
Let me rephrase, I guess, in internet recruiting versus visiting different places. How's that break down there?
The actual job fairs don't produce as many applicants as actually the internet. The internet is our most successful recruiting effort. But we do attend job fairs because we do get some candidates there. But it is less than what the internet brings in.
Is the national, I don't know how to describe it, not as desirable profession as it used to be because of all the struggles that the profession faces? Is that, do you feel that kind of hits us some?
Oh, yes, sir.
Everybody else does too, I'm sure. But
it's hitting everyone. Law enforcement is not a job that's sought after right now. Last year, we had 140 officers in the United States killed in line of duty. 68 of those officers were shot and killed, 23 of those in ambushes. Those are the highest numbers, ambush numbers we've seen in over 30 years. And so it's, and folks are afraid for their safety. I mean, the profession has been targeted, but I do believe that there are still people out there committed to serving, committed to doing this job. And we're competing with everybody else, with the other agencies here, but I believe we have something to offer here. We have tremendous support from the community here. We have tremendous support from the council and the city manager's office. We have technology, we have equipment, we have everything that you need to do your job. And I think we really just have to go out there and do a full court press to showcase that and get folks to come here.
let me also ask you this, Chief. Do you think it's worth, do you believe that as new officers come in, if we as a council could find some ways down the road to provide some incentives that would encourage them to make their home here, at least for the first few years, do you think that can be impactful?
Yes, sir. I mean, any people respond to incentives. That's proven time and time again. That's why we have sales at the store, and we have all kinds of different things. I mean, so different incentive packages could be impactful, especially I've seen some and I've read some across the country, down payment assistance if they buy a house in certain areas, or different things like that, or giving them a special rate on a property that's tax foreclosed, something like that, to encourage them to redevelop the neighborhood. Those kinds of things I've seen in other cities work. Baltimore's doing that right now because they have a lot of empty row houses that are they're trying to revitalize their neighborhoods there. So different things, yes, sir. That is possible.
Thanks, Chief.
Yes, sir. And then dispatch, go down the line. Most of our vacancies are in the sworn ranks, and again, as we were just talking with Councilmember Archer, that's where our challenge is, and that's where we're focused on getting those numbers up.
Before you move on, a quick question.
Yes, sir.
We had talked, and I know the last two budget cycles about, and I was just wondering if any of these positions were sworn positions that we were trying to do civilian versus sworn. I'm just curious.
Yes, sir. Let's see, the crime analysts are two. We've had, trying to find my mouse here. There we go. The crime analyst position here is, we've had sworn officers doing intelligence, and we still, right now, we've already moved one out because we have two. I'm going to talk about those specifically, but that's an opportunity for us to move sworn officers into investigative or field-oriented positions and get civilians doing that job. The civilian dispatch manager is one where we have a lieutenant there that would free up the lieutenant to do some other things. The public service professionals, we're going to use them to move our Skywatch towers and different things around. That will free up, because right now if we don't have them, we have two that work day shift. We don't have any on nights. On night shift, if they want to deploy that equipment, they have to assign a sworn officer to go move those things. And I believe it'll give us the opportunity to help on freeways, accidents, traffic control wise.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chief, taking into account retirements and that we have 7 in academy and 2 laterals, when do you project as a goal that we could be at 234?
My desire is to be at 234 by the end of the year. I can't see it any other way, and we just have to push. And we have 46 people that have 20 years or more, so technically they're eligible to retire. We have 23 people out of that 46 that have 25 or more years. So realistically, they're much closer to retirement than those 20-year-olds, because they could retire at 20, but your new isn't sustainable over time as far as a retirement income. So really, we have what I consider 23 people already in queue who could retire in the next 2 to 3 years. So realistically, optimistically, I want to be full by the end of the year. Realistically, it's going to be about a 2-year process, I would think, and we're going to have to struggle. We're also prepared this year. We've always had just one academy at a time. Since HR is working with us and we're given a test every month, when we get the next group, we're going to start a second academy. Well, this one's still in there.
Concurrently.
Yes, sir. We're going to run a concurrent academy when we fill them up. We're going to do everything we can humanly do to fill the department up. Yes.
Chief, if I could also ask another quick question with regards to some of the civilian positions. How are we doing with, say, detention officers and dispatchers in terms of the area comparison pay these days?
From the last numbers I saw, which was last year when I came on board, I looked at it, we were competitive. We were at market in the range with all the other areas. In fact, we only have one vacancy. I think actually we only have one vacancy right now because we just hired somebody from Kaufman Sheriff's Department. I talked to Chief in McKinney, he's down 6. I talked to the chief in Irving, they're down 5. So everybody else is in much worse position in dispatch than we are. So we're doing some things right here. And the commitment that's been made on behalf of the city manager's office and the city council for compensation, I believe is paying off. So, no pun intended. So. All right, some of the projects we're working on here, Canine Officers, this is a big program. We have the 2 vehicles already being equipped for the canines. They're being outfitted at the service center. Our 2 handlers have been selected. There was a competitive process, an interview process. We even brought in, with the cooperation of a couple of other agencies, Garland PD that has a canine, and Allen PD. They lent us their supervisors to help us evaluate our personnel who were applying, and that was a big help to help us see the kind of skill sets we would need to be successful in the program. So the 2 officers that were selected, already been selected. They've been to some basic training already. The kennels and concrete pads have been installed at their residence, which is required. The dog has to stay with them. Our vendor, Top Dog, is out of Modesto, California. They were one of 5 vendors. They were the one vendor who was willing. Normally, in the field training process, you send your handlers to the vendor, and they stay there on site and they train. They're willing to send a trainer here and train our officers on site here in Mesquite, which is what I thought was a big deal, to help the canines get acclimated as well as the officers. And so they're already staying here. We've already started the handler and decoy training in March. It's already going. They're expected to go fully live in June. We have a couple of pictures here. This is Officer Jeremy Wildman. He's one of the handlers, and that's Axel, his canine. And this is Cosmo and Officer Jason Crawford. And that's a picture of the kennel. You can see the concrete pad they're kneeling on there. And the kennel we had constructed at his residence. Here's some facts about the dogs. Axel and Cosmo were born in Slovakia. They're a crossbreed Dutch and German Shepherd. And so that breed gives them a smaller frame, but more agility and more stamina. One of the things that happens to particularly law enforcement canines over time is hip dysplasia, getting in and out of the vehicle. So a smaller frame dog should be able to get about without that as much wear and tear on the hips. There were 6 dogs that they took a look at. In fact, Alan allowed their canine supervisor to travel. We covered his airfare, but he traveled with us there to, again, help in the selection process. We realize this is a huge commitment on behalf of the city and our department, and we want to do everything to make it successful. And so, and they helped us do that. They're going to start their full training today. It's 8 weeks before they're be fully certified. and they should be working patrol by the end of May. So, there we go. This thing here. The SRO is already working, so that one's been completed. The 2 crime analysts, we received 152 applications, and 2 people have been tentatively selected, and they're in the background phase. So we're moving forward there. We should hopefully have them on board by April, barring any surprises in background. The 2 public safety professionals, these are going to be they're going to be truly utility players for the police department. They're going to help us move our equipment around, the Skywatch towers, the signs and everything else, our decoy vehicles, our VARDA alarms. We're not VARDA anymore, but our alarms that we put at businesses, and they'll be able to help us out on the freeways. And so the people have already been selected. They're going to start April 1st. We're going to move them over from the jail starting April 1st. Civilian dispatch manager. The job has been posted and the application has been received. There was a committee of the HR director, Assistant Chief Fayboard, Chief Kirby, and David, who else was that? Zach Gajor, our technology director. And they interviewed 5 candidates, and we're going through that right now. They're being evaluated now. Polygraph has already been outsourced. The one who won the contract was a retired detective who's now doing the polygraphs for us. The 8 LiDAR units, those are laser radar. They're already in the field. They're already being used. Spillman has been installed. Servers are installed. We're expected to go live next week, the 28th of March, and it won't be completed till June. It's June 2017, end of June there. Deploy software, we already used that for this bid. That was the staffing software. The online reporting and the ATAC raids, that's a crime sharing software. They won't be able to be installed until Spillman is fully online at the end of June. 5 mobile monitoring systems. The vendor's has been selected, and the product has been selected. The purchasing process. Those are the camera trailers we talked about earlier. Mobile license plate system. We asked for $22,000 because that's what we're going to get in the grant. We're going to have to make up another $25,000 to our seizure. That's what's on the seizure amendment, because the one we looked at was mess up in the price. We didn't get the right price. The right price is $47,000, but the grant's going to pay for almost half of that. So this mouse, keep losing the mouse there. The WatchGuard video camera system, that's our dash cam in the vehicles. It's all going to be replaced, and so they're at their end of their life cycle. And then the 4-year replacement, same thing. The MDCs are at the end of their life cycle. Every 4 years, replace them, and that's anticipated, and that's already being installed. The IT staff's working on the installation. Here's a recap of our projects. The SRO, the polygraph, and the LiDAR, and deploy software off 100% complete, and the others, there's a status there for them. And I'll take any questions.
Any other questions for the chief?
I do.
Okay.
I know it's not been too long since we had our last policy retreat, and we talked about it, but how do you feel like your plans for the, you talked about kind of geographical policing with your lieutenants and whatnot. How's that going so far?
It's going well. The lieutenants, the 4 patrol lieutenants, we've divided the city into quadrants, and each lieutenant in patrol is assigned to a quadrant. We meet with them every 2 weeks to talk about crime in their area, the plans that they have. So they're coming along well. It's a process that takes time to get them used to looking at an area and developing their own crime solutions to dealing with the things, and understanding whatever resources that they need. The process is a change from traditional law enforcement, where it's very top down. I tell them what they need to do. This is where they get to know their area and the stakeholders in their area, and they tell us what they need to accomplish. My role is then to provide them the resources they need to accomplish that. So it's coming along.
Good. I'm grateful for that. What would you say your biggest concern overall is in terms of any specific crimes that you feel like you got to kind of keep your eye on a little bit closer, or that just sticks out to you as you look at the numbers on a regular basis here in Mesquite?
Well, of course, B&Vs, because they're the most often reported, that impacts people. When you come out, regardless if you left your car unlocked or they broke your window, because 28% of the crimes of the offense, they did that, you're impacted when you lose something that's yours. And it shakes people's sense of safety. And so even property crimes are still going to be, I think, our biggest focus, because that's 90% of all reported crime, whether it's your house being broken into, your car being stolen, your vehicle being stolen. We don't have mass transit here, so if you don't have a vehicle, you're dead in the water. You can't catch a bus, you can't ride the train, you can't get to work, you can't go to the grocery store, to doctor's appointments. I mean, we do have Star Transit, but it's just not the same as having a true mass transit system. And so we take all that very seriously, and so we're going to be working very, very diligently to lower those crime numbers even further when it comes to property crime.
Over the years, I've heard many Crime Watch officers at different meetings always talk about how, drugs in some way often contribute to multiple forms of crime that we see one way or the other. How do you see that affecting things in Mesquite, and how do you feel like our overall drug challenges, if major any, are in Mesquite? What's your overall thought about that?
Well, nationally, the big issue has been opioid overdoses. And in the Northeast especially, they've even issued officers the Narcan. It's an antidote to, but we haven't had that experience here in Mesquite.
Thankfully.
Yeah, thank God. Most of the issues we still have here is with what I've seen. The arrests we made is marijuana, cocaine, and methamphetamine. People selling those things. In fact, the second most, I guess, often reason a juvenile in our schools are arrested is possession of marijuana. And so the other is shoplifting, and that's not at school. That's out, in our retail areas, all the businesses we have. So it is impacting young folks' lives because they get involved in this stuff, and then they get a criminal record, and it hurts them down the line when they apply for colleges or jobs or whatever. And so that's our biggest struggle, as I see it in my first year here, is that when you look at marijuana nationally, it's being legalized in all different states and all that kind of stuff. I'm not a proponent of that. I think that's a mistake, but it's not my decision. Whenever the legislature decides to do something, that'll be the law, and we'll follow it. But that's what I see as the biggest issues here is marijuana and cocaine.
Well, my last question, just to tie into that, Chief, is when I was in high school here in Mesquite, there was a lot of public campaigns against drugs, and it was a lot of youth involvement, and there may be more now that I'm not aware of. Councilman Casper might know more than I would, but obviously, just like with a lot of crimes, there's only so much enforcement can do. Do you think there's more we could do here in this community in terms of a public service campaign to get that word out of how harmful it is for our youth?
Well, yeah, there's always more that we can do. Yes, sir. As a community, we're battling against I guess, a culture that it's okay. And I still believe that the marijuana is a gateway drug. I still believe alcohol is a gateway drug, tobacco, all those things. Anything that changes the way you think, act, or feel, I believe is not good for you because it puts you in an altered state of mind. But I'm an old guy, and not everybody sees the world the same lens that I do. And all the interactions that I have with youth, and I have a bunch of them here, and my officers, we have a Let's program where we talk to elementary school kids, young as fourth graders. And that's one of the things we talk to them about is staying away from those kind of things. And our school resource officers are just that, they're a resource. They talk to young folks every day and interact with them in a very non-enforcement, non-investigative way and coach them, mentor them, talk to them about the hazards of that. Whether you agree with whether marijuana should be illegal or not, it affects your life if you use it or you get arrested for it. It's going to impact you. And so that's the message we're taking out to folks.
And I think your officers are doing a great job with the SROs and the LETs. I was speaking as a community beyond what your guys do. Could we do more out here to get the word out? Because your guys, I think, are doing everything
we're
they
doing
can do.
that. People want to partner with us and talk to young folks, churches, talking to the youth groups, any other civic group. We don't have a boys club or girls club here, but the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, any opportunity you have to talk to young folks about not damaging their bodies, regardless of how you believe whether it should be legal or not. If you take a substance that impacts your physical health and your brain development, it's going to cause you issues, especially at a very young age. So,
Well, special thanks to you and all of your men and women who keep us safe, including all the civilian employees. Thank you so much, Chief.
yes, sir.
That's all I got, Mayor.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief.
My-
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
If you had another question.
Knowing the demographics of our city again, just wanting to know where we're at as far as having enough officers out there that are bilingual, or do we see that need right now, or are we projecting that we're going to need to get more bilingual officers in as well?
Yes, sir, definitely. The need is there now. 54.5% of the students in MISD are Hispanic, and so when you translate that to home numbers, that means they're going to have parents, usually two, at home. There's going to be a significant number of people in the city, and the parents are probably limited English proficient. The kids speak English because they go to school, but the parents may or may not be who we need to interact with, and they're not English proficient. So we contract currently in our dispatch with a language line, a company a third-party vendor that we can contract, and we can call them, and they can be a translator for us over the phone. We have 13 Hispanic officers in the department right now, and only 7 of those speak Spanish. We have 2 other folks who speak Spanish. We have 9 Spanish speakers, 10 including myself, who can communicate in Spanish. So it is definitely, the need is there now, but it's one of the needs we have with just filling up getting the people in the organization. I would like for some of those people to be Spanish speakers, and they don't necessarily have to be Hispanic, because 2 of our Spanish speakers are not Hispanic, and they speak much better Spanish than I do. One of them does anyway, and so it's something that we have to be cognizant of, and that's what we had our first Crime Watch meeting in Spanish. You were a witness to my Spanish, and Officer Steve Contreras' Spanish, and so we need help. So, but it was a great day in Mesquite, because it was the first time ever we've had a Crime Watch meeting in Spanish. We were able to get some good information out there, make some connection with folks, hopefully build some relationships going forward. That's what we're going to need, and we're going to need on a much larger scale. We have to raise the bar there, and so we're going to definitely be looking for that as a skill set, and even partnering with HR at some point to see about some incentive for getting people who learn Spanish. We already offer the Spanish pay, but how does somebody who wants to speak Spanish, who doesn't know where do they go to school to learn? It's not really college. I mean, I took Spanish in college, and it didn't help me. So that's not necessarily the way to do that. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Chief, for what you're doing. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for those updates.